Woody Johnson is not a happy man. A future free agent tackle says he wants to be a Jet. The upcoming Super Bowl. I'm Glenn Naughton with Jet Nation Radio and JetNation.com. Be sure to log into JetNation.com where you can register and become a part of what is the most active Jets message board on the web. Apologies for no show Wednesday. Completely my fault. Got back from Mobile and I just completely lost track of days of the week. Thought we were going live Wednesday night. Turned out it was already Thursday. Tried to make that work. That didn't work. And then we tried tonight. And Dylan had something come up, couldn't join us. So wanted to get a show out there, though, because the Woody Johnson story is worth discussing. Woody comes out at the ESPN Honors last night and says a couple of things. Really no surprise to anyone. Just surprising that Woody said it out loud because he's not always vocal on these types of things. But we'll start off with his criticism of Zach Wilson, which I thought was out of line. I mean, you're trying to trade the guy. You don't come out and talk about a player you're trying to trade and say that even you don't believe he's a good player, which is not what Woody said in so many words. But he did say that it was a failure to not have a backup quarterback last year. Which part of that too is you're the owner. If you thought that was the case, like we know Woody Johnson gets involved with some of these decisions. I'm not saying he's an overly meddling guy getting in all the business and all that, but he's not shy either. He does get involved in these things. If Woody Johnson honestly believed there was an issue at QB2, which there was, I say it all the time. Dopey blogger, right? I'm a dopey blogger, and I knew it. I tweeted out before the season that it would be malpractice for the Jets to go into this year with Zach Wilson as their QB2. I thought that was a huge failure for Joe Douglas. So for Woody to say he didn't like that they didn't have a QB2 as well, Woody, you and I are a little different. I can comment on it. You've got the power to pick up the phone and say, Joe, what are you doing? Go get us a QB2. And you didn't. So, and again, if Woody never got involved in anything, I could say, well, he's being true to form. He doesn't get involved. He lets the GM do his job. And now this is what happened. Well, again, we know with big decisions, Woody gets involved. I'm not criticizing him for that. I say all the time, people who say, oh, stay out of the business, like you would. If you owned the Jets, you just sit back and twiddle your thumbs and not speak up when there were big decisions to be made. So let's be honest there. So that was, of all the things Woody said, I thought that was the one that was not necessary. We didn't need him piling on Zach Wilson. But and Christine says maybe fire Saleh and Douglas, Woody. I would fire Saleh. I wouldn't fire Douglas. And here's why. And, this was the one thing Woody said that I liked because I think he's right. He basically said, we have too much talent to not be winning games. He said the coaches, we've got all this talent. Coaches have to put guys in position to succeed. I'm paraphrasing. That's basically what it came about. So look at this roster. We're not going to go 1 through 53. But this is a team that has, arguably, we can split hairs and say top 5, top 7, top 9, top 10, top 3. But for the sake of expediency and to just break down some of the spots where the Jets are a really talented team. And don't mistake this for saying they're a perfect team because, yeah, they got some holes they got to fix. But the Jets have a top 5 corner in Sauce. I'm not even going to say top 10 because you could make the case he's top 3. We'll say top 5 corner in Sauce Gardner. We'll say top 10-ish receiver in Garrett Wilson. Based on last year, top 3, top 5 linebacker in Quincy Williams. Top 5 DT in Quinnen Williams. Top 5 nickel corner in Michael Carter. So, and Jermaine Johnson, Pro Bowler, top 12, top 15, D end. Hell, even if you want to say top 20. I mean, there's a lot of D ends in the NFL, right? There's, 50, 60 of them. If you're top 15, you can make an argument for top 20. You're a pretty good player. And then, rookie All-Pro, Joe Tippmann. Of course, and again, this is lots of issues on the line, of course. They need to say they need to improve in some spots. They needed a better wide receiver too. there are positions where they're weak. But the point I'm making is that Joe Douglas, in my mind, has brought in enough talent that the results should be better. And they haven't been. That's where Robert Saleh comes in. And as Woody Johnson said, the coaches have to put these guys in better position to succeed. Talked about wanting Robert Saleh more involved on the offensive side of the ball. Johnny Football says Saleh supposedly becoming offensive coach. Yeah, this is exactly what I was just saying. Draft the best lineman in the draft. JPJ. Listen, if you can get you're not taking JPJ at 10. If you can trade down and add a late 1 or an early 2, well, no, you're going to have to get JPJ in the first. I'm all for it, man. He was, in my mind, even though he didn't do the full week in Mobile, he was the best offensive lineman down there. He was just such a technician. Everything he did, every move he made looked robotic. And I mean that in a good way, like just perfect. Everything was I didn't see him lose a single rep. And just taking guys completely wherever they wanted to go, that they couldn't get there. Just taking guys off course consistently. And the guy's 21 years old. So JPJ, absolute monster. He is going to be a first-round pick. He's not a top 10 pick. But the good news is there are tons of good offensive linemen in this draft. And the Jets can get one at 10. And if they can trade their way back into the first round or early second round, you're going to find starters there. You're going to get starting players in the top 50 on the O-line. Tackle, guard, center. There's a few good centers. There's a few really good guards. There are some tackles who are going to move to guard and center. And, you don't know how those guys are going to pan out. Dominic Pooney, Kansas, right? He worked at center and guard in Mobile. So we're not sure how those guys are going to pan out. But we do know, obviously we don't know how any of them are going to pan out. But just looking at their ceiling and looking at their ability, lots of guys in this draft who can play. GM in the Empire, keep AVT at guard. I think they're going to leave that up to AVT. They've said they want to keep him in one spot, wherever it's going to be. I think they're going to go to him and say, where do you want to play? You want to be guard or tackle? Because then, based on what you want to do, that's going to impact how we approach free agency in the draft. And it's a good, I talked about this earlier, that Scott Mason played like a Jet mailbag. And we talked about this topic. And I don't know, AVT, I don't know if he's going to want to play where he thinks he'll be a better player, which is a guard, or where he'll think he can make more money, which would be a tackle. But my thing is, you're going to make a boatload of money either way if you stay on the field. If AVT stays on the field, he's going to be a very rich man, as he should be. So where he decides to play is going to be interesting. If he really is a team guy, you get that impression from him. So I think that's what leaves open the possibility he'll say guard if he thinks that's best for the team. Wild Wave, how are we doing, man? Let's see. Woody Johnson's a bozo. Pick Zach Wilson, wanted Rodgers. Why can't he be like Dolan? Do you want anyone to be like James Dolan? Oof. But I get what you're saying, though, Wild Wave. I don't know that he picked Zach Wilson. There was reports this week. Of course, Rex Hogan left. And there were reports that had a lot to do with him strongly endorsing Zach Wilson, which I get. But at the end of the day, Joe Douglas is the guy making the picks. The only time, when I look at the Joe Douglas era, when I look at the drafts he's had since getting here, I would be open to the possibility that he took a little more input from the coach in his first draft than any other. Why? Well, that was Adam Gase. And Adam Gase got him the job. They knew each other from Chicago, obviously liked each other. Adam Gase was the one who went to the Jets and said, listen, get rid of McCagnon and let's get my guy Joe D in here. So that's the guy that just got you the job. So maybe when they're sitting in the draft room, in the war room, he's letting Adam Gase's input have a little more impact than he would the guy he brings on, which, of course, is Robert Saleh. And obviously the draft, that draft with Gase, it turned out to be a bad draft. But Joe Douglas still, he's still tied to those picks. Becton, we've talked about. The only guys left from that class. You got Becton, you got Ashton Davis, and you got Bryce Hall. That's it. All three of those guys could be gone this offseason. But I wouldn't be surprised if Hall and I would expect Davis to be back. Hall is a depth piece. Why not? And Becton, the only reason I think there's any chance at all he comes back is because this tackle class, or sorry, this tackle market in free agency is so bad, and the Jets are going to want to shore up as many holes as possible. Excuse me, before the draft. So Becton to the Jets on a 1-year deal, a 1-year prove it deal. Not the craziest thing in the world as far as I'm concerned. But Woody Johnson, again, spoke out, was not happy, basically said, time's now. We got to win. He didn't come out and say there was a playoff mandate and that people would be fired if they didn't, but he said, like, this is it now. We have to win. We have to do something. He said the conversations he's had with Saleh and Douglas, he said that's as mad as they've seen me since getting here. Woody should be mad, but Woody, again, shouldn't be trashing Zach and could have pushed for the Jets to sign a QB2. I've said many times, and you can call it a conspiracy theory if you want, but it's the lack of a QB2 was so egregious that I had a hard time believing Joe Douglas made that decision on his own. And I'm not talking about other people. I'm talking about over his head. The people who decide how much money gets spent on which players. Did they look at, and not just money, just you look at picks, you look at everything they put into the quarterback position last year, between Zach's salary, between what they gave up to get Rodgers, did they get to a point where they said, we're not giving you another 10 million for quarterback, or 8 million, whatever it would take to get a quality backup in there. So Woody Johnson's unhappy, as he should be, but Woody Johnson should do a better job of not trashing players who are about to be traded. Ashton Davis developing well, and there's other guys, not from that, not necessarily from that class, but I feel like Jamie and Sherwood's a guy who's getting better every year, and I expect him to see increased playing time again next year. He's sort of every year he's seeing the field a little bit more, so I would expect some more of that this year. So lots of there are some good young players on this team, but you still, we know the O-line situation. Carter Warren, a guy you like who showed some things, but you can't really, etch him in. He's a guy at best who you're looking at as you can pencil him in as a guy who can compete for a spot next year, but you still need to get guys who you can count on, who you think higher of than you do of him. But GM Inland Empire. I agree. Ashton Davis had his best season as a Jet. Bryce Hall didn't play a ton, but when he did, he played well. And we talked about Becton. So those three guys might be back. That right now, I think, is Joe Douglas's worst draft class. A lot of misses. I think the Cam Clark broken neck, obviously didn't help things. I thought he was a starter type player at some point. But the owner has spoken, which he rarely does. And he made the point. And that's why, to me, those comments put more heat on Saleh than Douglas. And I talked about this earlier. I wrote the number. I don't have the numbers written down over there. I don't know whatever the total was. Ozzie Newsome, and I make this point all the time. Ozzie Newsome, Hall of Fame GM, and I'm not putting Joe Douglas in his class. I'm just saying, over his first 6 seasons before he won a Super Bowl, the Ravens were never over 500, and in fact were 21 games under 500 before they won their first Super Bowl with Ozzie Newsome. And I get that they moved from Cleveland to Baltimore. Pro Football Network, they list Ozzie as, at that time, the de facto GM for like 4 years, 5 years. I don't know what that means. I know Ozzie Newsome was always through the years been given credit for that team that was built in Baltimore. So on paper, somewhere, I guess he wasn't in some way the GM. I don't know. I don't know why he's listed as general manager for every year he's there, except those first 4 or 5 years in Baltimore, where it says de facto general manager. Ozzie Newsome drafted Ray Lewis. Ozzie Newsome put those rosters together. Whether there was an administrative glitch or some weirdness going on, those were Ozzie's teams, and he should be proud of those teams. But prior to winning that Super Bowl, he was 21 games under 500 and drafted like 10 quarterbacks, including Kyle Bowler in the first round, who we talked about. So Ozzie had big-time, high-profile misses at quarterback. I don't know why this new mentality, this era of football, fans feel like if you drafted one quarterback and he failed, that's it. You got to go. That sounds absurd to me. I'm happy with the hits we've seen from Joe Douglas. There have been misses. Everybody misses, but not everybody hits. Not at the way Doug. And listen, we did the show. Myself and Dylan Terman did a show a couple months ago where we broke down every single Joe Douglas pick, all of them. And if you stack it against the past 10, 15 years of the history of the league, he's been at least average. And if we're being honest, with the number of Pro Bowlers, All Pros, like high level guys that he's found, I would put him at above average. People want everyone to be a star. Oh, well, that pick is that's a bad pick because that dude never went to an all Pro Bowl. That's a bad pick because that dude's only average. Average is okay. Guess what? Most guys are at slightly above or slightly below average. That's where you get average. So because some of his guys fall in the range that most guys fall who play in and belong in the NFL, I mean, it's crazy. Wild Wave, great question, man. Who replaces Rex Hogan and Chad out? That's who knows. And listen, this is the concerning thing. These are high-level guys leaving the Jets less than 90 days till the draft. I know draft boards are still being built and players will move up and down and all that. It's not as if your draft board is finalized right now. But this is a critical time. This is not a time where you want to be firing the second in command and then the third in command for your general manager. Who they have in that front office, who they're going to elevate. And that was a great point Scott made. Scott Mason talking about Chad Alexander saying, was this a case where Chad Alexander wasn't going to be given the spot that was vacated by Rex Hogan, so he left? Or is he another guy who was like, you know what, I don't think I want to be here anymore? Because the Jets have had a few of those guys recently. Coaches, front office. And we don't know, like with Embry being let go, you've seen multiple coaches leave, multiple front office guys leave. Is this a sinking ship that people are just bailing? Or are the Jets saying, look, here's we've identified some areas where we can make some changes to make us better? Based on how things have been going lately, I would tend to think some of these guys wanted to leave. Let's see, extend Douglas so he doesn't make any stupid decisions. I think as long as Joe Douglas, listen, the biggest thing that has to happen for Joe Douglas is some of these offensive line guys, got to stay healthy. The amount of time these linemen have missed in recent years have made the line look a lot worse than it actually is. Even a guy like Wes Schweitzer, who wasn't great, but he was better than, the guys who they had to plug in after him, Hansen and who else did you have? We were going over them earlier. Glazer, Chris Glazer, Jeff Hansen. They gotta get some of these guys. These are depth pieces. Xavier Newman. These are practice squad types who need to be developmental players, which is fine. But when you get as many injuries, if you bring McGovern back, if you bring Schweitzer back, those guys got to stay on the field because even as backups, those aren't bad options. But when those guys get hurt and AVT gets hurt, and then you're getting into your practice squad, that's when things go awry, very awry. Dylan Terman, Dylan couldn't join us live, but I'm happy. It looks like he's watching and he's commenting. We may have sat next to the assistant GM at dinner in Mobile. The next. That's correct. I forgot about that. Dylan and I went out. It's funny. Mobile's small. But even with that being the case, there's 32 teams there, 32 front offices. And we after day one of practice, went out to grab some dinner, sat down, and the table next to us, it was Jets executives. Dylan, they were over my shoulder. Dylan spotted them. He was like, I think the Jets are sitting behind us. And I was like, what are you talking about? And he said, the guy's right behind you. And I turned around and it was like, oh, okay. So, Mobile's a small place, man. We didn't bother them. I'm not there to harass anybody trying to do their job or enjoy their night out. But yeah, one of the guys at the table might be the next assistant GM under Joe D. So we'll see. It's wild times, man. 80-some days. I don't know how it's 70-some, 80-some days till the draft. And Jets assistant GM steps away, and then the guy under him steps away. So you're losing some heavy hitters in your front office right at draft time. Not what you want to see. Quick note. We all know the Jets are going to be desperately trying to add some talent at tackle and free agency this year. Donovan Smith, Kansas City Chiefs tackle. I was really surprised by this. You rarely hear teams or players who are under contract, and not just under contract and playing in the Super Bowl tomorrow. Like, you'd think bigger things on their mind. Kansas City Chiefs tackle Donovan Smith says he would love to play for the Jets. Says he grew up a Jets fan. Jersey guy, apparently. I think he said he was Jersey. Wherever it was, Jersey, New York. He's from the area, has played tackle in the league, left tackle for quite a while now. I think 8, 9 years. Played for the Bucs. He's played for the Chiefs. I'm not going to sit here and pretend I've watched a ton of him. Took a quick peek at PFF, but Glenn, PFF doesn't know what they're talking about. Okay, fine. You go watch his 139 career games and get back to me and let me know where you're grading him. But if I see a guy says he wants to play for the Jets and I got a couple hours till I go live, I don't have time to watch a bunch of his games. So I hop over to PFF and just get a rough idea what they're saying. And this year, not very good. They grade him at a 57 overall, 62 pass blocking, not terrible. Run blocking, 47, terrible. But just, what was it? From 2019 to 2021, some good PFF grades. Overalls, 70, 72, 80. Then last year, his final year in Tampa Bay, dipped to 59. This year in Kansas City, 12, 13 starts. He dipped to 57. So he's a guy who's been around for a little while. He's on the decline. He entered the league in, let's see, it looks like 2015. So he's been around for a while. And again, it appears he is declining. He's a guy, look, if the Jets are going to have interest and if his name's being mentioned, I might break away from watching college prospects to take a look at him and see what I think. But I hear something like that, a guy who's currently under contract, hours away from playing in the Super Bowl, talking about, I'd love to go play for the Jets. That sounds to me like a guy who isn't expecting a great number of offers in free agency and knows who really needs a tackle. Let's see. Nania from X Factor. Okay, so Michael Nania, I guess. Not high on Donovan. Yeah, like I said, I haven't watched them. I heard the story. It popped up on my feed a couple hours ago. I knew I was going live. I'm crazy busy right now. Listen to what I did. The genius that I am. 10 seconds away from football coverage. Before I leave for Mobile, I order all new furniture for my study. And I set up to have it delivered when? The day after I get back from Mobile. Like, I land, get home, sleep. The next morning, furniture delivered. And since I was in Mobile, I couldn't get rid of the old furniture and the living room. So I have multiple extra rooms worth of furniture in my house that I got to fit. And, oh, by the way, my kid's birthday's in 2 days. And he's having all friends over. So I'm like, not in typical, not in a normal situation where I can be watching more football. I actually edited some clips earlier from some draft prospects. Delmar Glaze, tackle from Maryland. Didn't love him the first watch. And when I say first watch, like, I went through 3 of his games. Didn't come away loving him, but went through today. And as I was editing the clips and highlights I pulled, I was like, I think I like him more than I realized. I'm not saying he's great, but really good length, a true left tackle. Better than some of the guys that are being mentioned with him. Probably a 3rd, 4th round, probably late 3, early 4. But some of these guys go a little earlier because positional value, right? Like, there's not a lot of great tackles in the league. And if you need a couple, if you're looking for a starter and a backup, teams take tackles earlier than they would if they played a less important position. So maybe a Delmar Glaze goes late round 3, early round 4. We'll see. Let's see. Dylan says he made $3 million last season, so it should be a cheap deal. I would imagine. I don't think he's not, given his age, performance. He's probably not in a position to demand a ton of money. But look, if you want to bring a guy like that in as a depth piece, absolutely. But like I said, just I would think any player being asked, like, and the quote I saw today, maybe he said it yesterday or the day before, but if it's Super Bowl week and someone's asking you, hey, would you like to play for this other team? I think you'd be like, shut that down. I'm not talking about that right now. Like, I got a Super Bowl coming up in a couple days. That's where my head's at. So I was a little surprised he said that. Speaking of which, players speaking out publicly on where they want to play, they almost never do it. My guy Brock Bowers did it the other day. The tight end from Georgia, who I want, but he's not going to be there. I've mentally moved on. Yes, I still want Brock Bowers at 10, but I've moved on from Brock Bowers because I can't see him being there at 10. He's too good. I've seen 2 or 3 mocks now that have him going in the top 8. I saw 2 that had him going at 5, 1 that had him going at 7. And the more I watch him, I'm like, who is passing on this guy? Like, I would legitimately take him. The only guys in this class I would take over Brock Bowers. The top 2 quarterbacks, I'd take May and Williams. I'd take Marvin Harrison Jr. And that's it. Maybe, depending on what I need, maybe Joe Alt. No worse than 5. Wild Wave says, bro, for that, bring back Becton. Again, how much is Becton going to, Becton obviously is not going to get the huge deal he was hoping for. Every player is hoping for a huge deal. But those late season struggles for Becton, I think, are really going to hurt him. And I think he's going to have to take a little bit less. Let's see. Dylan chimes in. Dylan, you may as well have been on the show, man. Come on. But no, this is great. Thanks for Dylan throwing in some good info here. Latest mock from Lance Zerline has Fuaga to the Giants at 5. Could happen. Latham at 10 to the Jets. Latham, I hadn't watched as much of in Mobile. Going into Mobile, was focusing primarily on Senior Bowl prospects. I did like what little I'd watched of him. Dom C, while we were there, talked about, was raving about how much he liked him. So I watched a little more of him the last couple of days in Mobile, and then I've watched a little bit of him since getting home. I would have no problem with Latham at 10. A lot of folks worry because, he's big like Becton. Listen, guys, there's going to be big players in the NFL. Did Snacks Harrison have any trouble staying on the field? He wasn't exactly 240. You're going to get guys sometimes that weigh 340, 350. That is a range that's rare, but it doesn't mean it. Listen, if Greg Van Roten never falls on Mekhi Becton's leg, who knows what he is right now? He might be an all-pro tackle, but Greg Van Roten did fall on his leg, and it did make him miss 2 years of his career. So maybe he's not the same guy he would have been if not for the injury. And that wasn't because of his weight. It's not like if he was thinner, his leg would have held up better when Greg Van Roten landed on it. So I don't care about I don't worry as much about Latham as some other folks do. If you watch Latham, and I said this earlier, if you watch Latham and Becton in college, Latham is so much more polished, so much further along. Like, he's a plug-and-play day one starter who you expect to play well from day one. Mekhi Becton, he was a plug-and-play starter, but you knew, at least, I talked about this with a lot of people. I thought, based on his Louisville film, and based on the fact that Louisville is another one of those offenses where the ball is out, it's like snap, out, snap, out. You're not asking these guys to hold up their blocks for an extended period of time. Watch some J.C. Latham film, or just watch some Alabama games on YouTube or whatever. And you're going to see time and again, he's holding up his blocks. And I don't mean just kind of winning. I mean dudes unable to get anywhere near the quarterback for 3, 4, 5, 6. You just count it out. You'll count 5+ seconds multiple times. I didn't see that once from Becton in college, and that's not Becton's fault. I'm just saying they're completely different offenses. Alabama asks their linemen to do things that are a lot closer to what an NFL lineman will do than what Louisville did. So you're not getting a raw prospect who's huge and he's going to need time to develop you want him to get better. But I wouldn't, to compare those two as players. I mean, you want to compare their weight, fine. But if you want to compare them as players, no, Latham is far better early in his career. Or, sorry, late in his college career, what will be early in his NFL career. Is Latham work with, I think, listen, Wild Wave, when you're talking day one left tackle starter, or he may play on the right side, wherever he's going to be, he's going to dominate. He's probably better suited for the right side. I was left tackle, I was thinking Becton, but yeah, Latham probably plays on the right side. But listen, if Fuaga's worth it, Latham's worth it. again, I don't have the injury concerns. And I think he's going to be a high level starter right away. Now, listen, some people might say he's going to struggle with speed rushers. The thing is, how many tackles don't? Like, that's why speed rushers make $1 billion a year because they give tackles nightmares. Um, let's see. I don't think the Jets should give up on Becton, even Wilson. Listen, Johnny Football, I have no issue with that. I would love to see Becton come back and be given a chance to compete for a starting job. I something was up last year, late in the year. I'm not First of all, I'm not gonna pretend I have inside info. I don't. All I know is Mekhi Becton, for whatever reason, for about a 4-week stretch, 4 or 5 week stretch, late last year, what week sort of 13 through 17, whatever it was the worst he's ever looked as a pro. It was, and don't tell me, well, he was mailing it in. Because what did everyone tell me all season? Oh, he doesn't get any credit for losing weight. He only put all that work in so he can get paid. Okay, so he only wants to get paid, but then he took 4 weeks, 5 weeks off late in the year and just didn't do anything. Guys were blowing past him like he was a statue. It was easily the worst football we've ever seen Mekhi Becton play. I don't know if it was fatigue because that would have been. You look at his college career, you look at his NFL career. He had at that point that he'd never played that many snaps in a season in his life. Maybe he hit a wall and was like, I'm not used to this. I'm not up to this. Maybe the knee was, but whatever. I'm not saying bring Mekhi Becton back on a big deal and promise him a starting job. I'm not saying that. I'm saying if you bring him back with a chance to win a starting job, but as a backup, I'd be completely fine with that. Matthias says trade down. That's kind of where I'm at, and that's why I've let the Brock Bowers thing sail in my mind. I can't really see using 10 and then not having another pick until 72. And it looks like, yes, indeed, I've got a co-host, Dylan Terraman. How we doing, Dylan? No audio. Not hearing you. Give that another shot.
You peer pressured me to come on. I was racing home. I saw you were live. So yeah, happy to join you for the back end of this one. Oh, now I lost your audio.
I think I would still prefer Fuaga, but I would have no problem with Latham. I think your audio went again. And Daniel Jeremiah, for those of you who I don't know if you've seen it or not, he had Fuaga as being the number 2 tackle on the board over anybody. And let's see, Wild Wave says I've seen that mock and had us passing on Olu. To me, if worst came to worst, AVT can play right tackle. Well, that's the thing, Wild Wave. Discussed it earlier. What does AVT want? I think they're going to give him that option. Highlander says Woody wasn't necessarily talking about Zach Wilson when he mentioned the team had no backup. I think he noted that Douglas didn't bring in a true backup for AR. Zach was right. But I mean, he was saying.
No, it was definitely Zach.
Yeah, Zach was the backup, and he said we didn't have a backup. So I think he was. I think he was taking a shot at Zach there, which I didn't think was necessary. But Douglas has to do better there. But sorry, Dylan, your thoughts on Latham?
So specifically with the mock, like the chat said, they did pass up on Olu to take him. So I was a little, upset about that. Like I haven't done enough on Latham. He's the last of the offensive tackles that I have to do in like that top 4, top 5 group. Him and Guyton actually are the last 2 on my list. But at 10, maybe it's a little rich for me for Latham, but I think more so the Olu passing up was the decision there. I know Connor Rogers has mentioned that would be Wirfs Becton part 2. I don't necessarily think it's that serious, but I do think there is a bit of a drop off before the tier of Latham and Guyton.
Oh, Franco says you messed up my audio, Dylan. Thanks a lot for that. I'm turning up my mic, so hopefully that helps, but I hope I'm not too loud.
I could turn mine down.
And I mentioned this, I thought I was really impressed with him in Mobile. We can't hear you. Am I muted or something?
I hear you. I screwed everything up. I ruined it all.
turn this up. I'm like maxed up on volume now. I'm blowing my own ears out with this thing.
Here, I'll leave real quick and see if it works better for you.
Yeah, try to go out and come back in. So yeah, Dylan's hopped out. He's gonna pop back in. Are you guys getting me yet? Let me know, Franco, Wild Wave, because I'm hearing me really loud in my earphones. And it's telling me my audio's on. It's telling me I'm not muted. So I apologize if it's low. Hopefully it's not completely audio still low. Yeah, that's weird. I'll turn it. I think I am turned all the way up. That's as high as I can go. Douglas drafted McDonald last year. Sorry guys, bear with it. I'm turned all the way up and I'll sit up to the mic. Douglas drafted McDonald last year. Dylan ruined it. Thanks a lot, Dylan. Um, wouldn't be surprised if we draft JPJ. He's not taking JPJ at 10.
No.
He'll take him later, but and I would love to have him. He's one of those guys that I'm curious to see where he goes because he had such a good week in Mobile, and I think he made himself a lot of money. But as far as Furaga or sorry Guyton, who we were talking about, he's a guy that I really wanted to see in Mobile because of the fact that, like I just said about Becton, right? The ball coming out quickly. Oklahoma, it's go, 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 go. The ball's just out so fast. You don't see these guys sustain blocks. You get to see it in Mobile in the one-on-one drills. And I thought he held his own. I thought he did for a guy who wasn't asked to do it a lot in college, I thought he did a really nice job of it in Mobile. And I don't know, what are your thoughts on Guyton right now as far as how early you would take him, Dylan?
So he's probably one of the top guys like in that Latham tier 2 where like if you traded back 4, 5, 6 picks, you could do it. And I know I said like a couple weeks ago, don't get cute if you like a guy and you have conviction on a guy at 10, but Guyton and Latham seem a little bit high to me. Back to JPJ though, I don't know. Obviously, I don't think he's on the Jets' radar unless they're in like the early 20 range, like a Linderbaum, like at 24. But I don't know if you saw Jim Nagy's tweet about the reoccurring or pre-existing injury he was dealing with in Mobile. So he was doing all that while battling through some stuff. So he really just showed some grit. So he definitely solidified himself. He could be a top 15 pick, but I think he's probably a top 20 guy. But I'd put him like if you traded back to 17, 18, 20, Guyton and JPJ are top on my list.
Yeah, I really think I think JPJ, I don't know why, but in my mind, I look at him and I'm like 17, 18. I can't see him fall past that. He's gonna be so good at the next level and probably a guy who can play center or guard for you. And it's audio. It is what it is. It's not a big deal. We'll power through. But the high ankle. Let's see. GM Inland Prime, or sorry, Inland Empire says high ankle sprain slowed him down. It had to be something. The thing is, I don't think they were showing him on the injury report, which was weird, especially based on how he was playing. Sometimes guys are playing like that, and you make up an injury to cover for him.
And he was on the injury report to begin the season every single week. So like that's nothing new to him. And like if he stayed on the injury report all season, that'd be fine. But he was not on it to end the season.
Yep. And, let's see, Huawei says Guyton and Olu have the highest ceiling. That's
I agree with that.
I would say Alt has the highest. Maybe you're talking about the guys we're discussing.
Yeah. I don't even think about Alt because I just feel like there's a 1% chance he's there.
Earlier saying I would take Fashanu at 10, and somebody replied, "Oh, you wouldn't take Alt," and I'm like, 0.0 chance he's going to be there.
Yeah.
May as well talk about Caleb Williams.
Mm-hmm.
Won't be there. I'm telling myself Bowers won't be there. I've seen a couple mocks where I saw another one today where he went to the Jets at 10. I've seen him go as low as 14, 15, but every time I watch him, I'm just like, this guy's not, he's not going to be there. But any thoughts on the Super Bowl, Dylan? I'm just going to throw out. I'm just going to throw out one or two thoughts. I don't know if you had anything you wanted to say.
I mean, all the other non-football storylines aside, I feel like I want the Niners to win so badly. I don't know. I'm getting a little tired of the Chiefs. I know they're fun to root for. Travis Kelce he's a fun player. Mahomes, he gets a little annoying, but he's still a fun player. He hasn't reached that Tom Brady status yet, but I don't know. Something about the Niners. I just got to root for them. They're Their roster's loaded. I love a lot of their players. Debo is my favorite non-Jet in the NFL, so I gotta root for him a little bit. But I don't know, something about the Niners just makes me want to root for them.
I had this thought about the Niners earlier, and I know that top to bottom they do have a lot more talent than the Jets, but how would we be talking about them? I mean, let's be honest, and I'm big on like give credit where it's due, but how lucky are they that Brock Purdy has been as good as Brock Purdy has been?
Yeah.
Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant, played like Mr. Irrelevant. They would have had to hand this team over to Trey Lance, who they clearly didn't like. They gave him away. They never even
Mm-hmm.
put him on the field, gave him away for a 4, 5, whatever it was.
Yeah.
So they're winning all these games, and they're doing it because they got a quarterback with the 8 million pick who's playing at a very high level. I don't know, coaching has a lot to do with that. Obviously, they've got a coach who knows offense a little bit. I thought about it because, and part of it was because of what I was saying earlier. That all the heavy, you got to fire Joe Douglas. He missed on a quarterback in the first round. That's fireable. And I'm like, didn't San Francisco miss on a quarterback early in the first round? But
Everybody but the Jaguars did that year.
56 or whatever it was. Um, and again, I know the Niners are more talented up and down the roster, but I was saying at the top, Dylan, you've got a rookie lineman who's just a rookie All Pro. You've got one of the best nickel corners in the NFL. You've got one of the best starters of top 3, top 5 corner, and Sauce Gardner. Probably another top 15 guy in DJ Reed. Maybe the best 1-2 combo in the NFL. If not, definitely top 3. Quincy Williams, Garrett Wilson, Brees Hall. Like, they put together a really good team that, again, people forget, they had the 8th best odds to go to the Super Bowl last year. But because they missed on a quarterback, the GM should be fired. But another GM who missed on a quarterback in the same class, who there were some pretty reliable high-level reports. They wanted the guy the Jets took. They ended up taking a guy who was a bust. But because Brock Purdy is playing like a stud, they're all geniuses and they should get extensions. But the Jets should fire their GM because he missed on a quarterback that same class. It's wild to me. As far as the game itself, I think, I want San Fran to win. I've always liked Mahomes, but
Mm-hmm.
that post game interaction this year with Josh Allen really turned me off that game.
Oh yeah, I remember.
Are you really going to the guy who just beat you and complaining to him about the referees? Like, just say good job, dude. Good game.
Yeah.
Like, that was one of the whiny, and I know everyone accuses great quarterbacks of whining. Why? Because a lot of them do whine, and a lot of them get called, and it pisses us off, and I understand that. But it was just such a smarmy, it was just a new low for me. Like, I'd never
Mm-hmm.
seen him say or do something that made me say, I don't like that dude. But that did it for me. I was like, I don't. However, this game, I don't think there's any way, and I hate excuse making and the referees don't like us. I hate that stuff. But if I'm the San Francisco 49ers, I'm telling my guys in the locker room before the game, like, we haven't kicked off yet, but we know the league wants pictures of Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift kissing at midfield with confetti falling around them. The league wants that. Like, the Niners or the Chiefs the Chiefs already get every call, but in this game with what's on the line, I think we're going to see some of the wildest stuff we've seen in terms of calls. And I think they really, really, the Niners have to go in with the mentality, we're playing the league today because they want this storybook ending with Taylor Swift at midfield and bringing a billion more, 13-year-old girls who want to watch football now. So I don't see any, and when it boils down to Patrick Mahomes versus Brock Purdy, as good as Brock Purdy has been, as much of a great story as he is, as much I would love to see Brock Purdy hoisting that trophy with all the trash people that talk about him. Like, all he does is produce, and all people do is trash him.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to see Brock Purdy win that game on Sunday. However, it's still Patrick Mahomes, and the NFL is going to want Taylor at midfield. I don't see any way San Fran wins this game unless they just come out and just, they're going to have to come out and play at a level that KC can't keep up with. and I don't see that happening. So
Mm.
I don't know what 28-24 Kansas City, but I'm hoping for a damn San Fran blowout.
Yeah, that sounds about right in terms of the score and what the outcome probably will be. Before we get to Wild Wave's question, I do want to say I believe the Jets' seventh round compensatory pick is slotted to be the final pick of the draft. So unless they move off it, they have a chance to, acquire their Mr. Irrelevant quarterback.
That those haven't been officially announced, have they?
No, but I think it's projected that they're gonna get like the last one.
It's projected, but and there's no way of knowing which one it is. I brought this up a couple weeks ago. Um, Part of the projection, part of them getting three picks, one of them was Dan Feeney, and
Mm.
part of that was going to be tied to his playing time. And I think he only played 11 snaps this year.
Oh, okay, yeah.
It was an article. It was written before the season. It was NFL.com. I forget who wrote it, and they were talking about the projected comp picks, and they went team by team, and they said the Jets get three. However, that will depend on Dan Feeney's playing time. But even up until just the other day, a few days ago, excuse me, Rich Cimini of ESPN reported that Jets projected three picks. So maybe they got it, or maybe they didn't, and people are going off the old projection, not realizing that Feeney only played 11 snaps this year. So maybe they
Right.
get it, maybe they don't. But go ahead and jump to that Wild Wave comment.
Yeah. Do you think Joe Douglas's philosophy of best player available changes with Rex Hogan and Chad Alexander out? Um, no, I don't think so because I mean these guys are all from the Baltimore tree, and I heard you mentioning Ozzie Newsome before, and I feel like that's always been his mo going into the draft as best player available. They never really reach for a need or it doesn't seem like they reach for a need. Obviously, you can question some of the picks Baltimore makes in the last 20 years, sure. But no, I don't think that it ultimately changes his philosophy. What I do think changes his philosophy is the temperature of his seat cushion and how hot that is. Because if he's on the hot seat, he's going to do some things that you probably wouldn't necessarily think Joe Douglas would do, perhaps trading that 2025 pick that Glenn always tries to give away. He could do that because it's the Magic Johnson meme. I'm not going to be here. If it doesn't work out, he might not be here. But should Woody sign off on that pick? I don't know.
That's the
So
thing. I think that's the
I think
opportunity.
the philosophy will look slightly different this year for sure, but I don't think it will stray too far from the best player available approach.
Yeah, I think, and the best player available thing. I've said this comment before. Every team says they're taking the best player, but like they're never going to be like, yeah, we took this dude, but we had seven guys graded above him. They need plays a big role. It's not just a wild coincidence that like 80-90% of picks, like, oh, they just happen to need a guy. How lucky for the 94th time in the last 100 picks, everyone's best player played a position where there was a need. Like, that plays a huge role. Um, it's never just about, let's see, oh, wow, this is bad. They're saying they literally can't hear a thing I'm saying. I thought people were saying the audio was low. Um, I apologize.
Uh,
Let's wrap this one up if this is the case.
yeah, yeah. Sorry.
Apologies for that, guys. I am all plugged in and unmuted. Um, let's see. We just got to bear with him.
Wild Wave sounds like the ultimate trooper right now.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Wild Wave. Appreciate it. We're gonna roll out. Yeah, Wild Wave says it's low for me. I will take a look at that. Have a good one, Jets fans. We'll catch you next week.